You are just a human, but through a powerful magic, you end up getting the behaviors of a real demon from the netherworld. We continue our journey through the second season of the anime. Welcome to Demon School. Episodes 4, 5 and 6. In the student council room, Ameri tells Iruma that she still hasn't gone back to who she really was, stating that she tried to wear her old clothes again so that she could somehow remember how she behaved before her sudden change. The girl says that at this moment she has no chance of winning the election against her popular opponent, so she declares to the protagonist that she wants to continue with her life the way it is, so she will be able to attend classes as a normal student, have fun without worries and spend more time with her friend. However, Iruma tries to bring his colleague to reality, saying that such thoughts do not overflow any ambition. He further reveals to Ameri that her determination and willpower made her a person admired by all and that even in the face of problems, she never gave up. After hearing these sweet words, the girl manages to regain her spirits and tells the protagonist that she will do her best to win the elections. The days go by and the election date is getting closer and closer. As a result, Clara and Asmodeus continue to carry out the investigation missions given by Iruma. However, the girl is looking for a game, which was taken by a student and has not yet been returned, this being the dating game with a difference in personalities, Yamato Nadeshiko version. Meanwhile, the Wonder Boy was conducting data collection on matter modification magic. After a few days, the long-awaited election has arrived, to decide who will be the new student president of the Babel's institution. Students, teachers and coordinators are gathered to watch a speech that each of the candidates will present before they start voting. Renove Lomiere is announced to be the first to make his speech. The demon delivers a glimmering presentation where he states that the students needed more fun for that school to become a pleasant and happy environment. All the students vibrate with emotion when they hear these words. After all, the school that sometimes ends up becoming a boring place, would for the first time be a place where everyone could have fun. Following the speeches, the next one is Azazel Ameri. The girl remembers the support she received from her friend, but in return, all the students were shouting Renove's name, making the girl even more hopeless. Ameri, who was extremely uncomfortable and shy, raises her gaze to the horizon and observes all the students gathered. As she glimpses this scene, the girl is reminded of what really matters to her, the true meaning of being a demon. She begins her speech fervently, telling all the students that they should not get carried away by mere momentary enjoyment, stating that the meaning of life lies in the ambition to achieve something, and what she really wants is an institution that awakens the ambition that exists in each of its students. The students, upon hearing those words, start shouting Ameri's name, believing that finally the strong student president is back to normal. Everyone is moved by those words of encouragement. Ameri at that moment looks at the one person who trusted her completely and who never abandoned her. In her thoughts, the girl finally gives in and believes that she has always been in love with Iruma. After the voting is over, the two candidates meet in the student council room. Ameri has won the approval of everyone in an overwhelming way. However, the school group still suspects Renove's involvement with the bewitchment of the president. The demon was very sad to have lost the election, but claims he has no involvement whatsoever with the girl's personality change. Just then, Iruma enters the student council room with his friends, and the young man claims that they have found the person responsible for using the spell on Ameri. The culprit is Elios Schnell, a second-year student. He always had an extreme admiration for the president, and this eventually became an obsession. The student had a dark desire in his mind. He would like to see the girl at least once acting docile and kind. Because of this, he devised his entire plan to bewitch the girl when she was most vulnerable, but his evil plan was discovered by Clara and Asmodeus, who found his hiding place due to the clues they followed. Elios is sentenced to do the student council training 50 times as a form of punishment. With the situation resolved and Ameri back to normal, she thanks the group of friends for their help and decides to make a proposal to the protagonist. The president asks him to choose between continuing on the student council or carrying out the reopening of the magic apparatus battlers. The young man, without much thought, chooses the second option. Iruma explains that he has evolved a lot with the training he received, but he had to reopen the club because in the future a person could return. Ameri understands the young man's choice and understands his motivations. Regarding Renove, the president asks if he does not wish to join the student council, since it would be very interesting to have a rival on the same team. Renove quickly accepts the proposal, and everyone there ends that day with an incredible photograph. It didn't take long for Ameri to go back to being the same person she was before, bossy, serious and extremely disciplinary. At the end of the day, the president talks to Iruma through the hellphone, and at that moment they both have a very emotional and sentimental conversation. At the end of the call, the protagonist is surprised by the appearance of Alucard. The creature tells his master that he acted in the right way towards his beloved and that the two have a very great affinity. As for Ameri, she was extremely embarrassed about the phone call with her friend in her thoughts and holding the election day photo. She states that she has big ambitions for Iruma. With the end of the protagonist in the student council, the young man was finally able to return home and his grandfather was extremely excited, so for a whole week, Sullivan had several parties every time Iruma returned home. But on the last day of the week, the powerful demon tells the protagonist that he should invite his friends to attend the party. This makes him very excited, because Iruma never had friends in the human world and therefore never called anyone to any kind of party. The young man typed on his hellphone and was prepared to send the message. But at the same time he was afraid that his two best friends would reject his invitation, since he was inviting them at the last minute. At that same moment, Alucard steps out of the ring and ends up scaring his master, who sends the message without meaning to, and to his surprise, receives positive responses from his friends who stated that they would be present at the celebration. A little time passes and Iruma hears the doorbell ring. Clara and Asmodeus were at her door and brought some food as a thank you for the invitation. The girl shows her friend a kind of fruit she picked in the forest. When the protagonist goes to find out what it was, he is startled to realize that the thing is actually a living creature. Then everyone joins the dining table and with a huge feast, everyone eats very well and enjoys the moment together. At the end of the meal, Opera makes a proposal for them to participate in a game before dessert. The butler brings with him the game Devil Dance Liberation, a dance game, playable through a holographic projection. The objective of the game is very simple. Just follow the movement commands that the game issues and in the end, each one will receive a score according to their due performance in the dance. In this way, everyone has fun dancing in various unusual ways. When the music ends, the instructor warns that he will announce the result of the participants. In last place is Sullivan with only 6 points scored, in fourth place was Iruma with 666 points, third place was taken by Clara, in second place, Asmodeus, and in first place with a series of numbers 6 to lose sight of, Opera as the winner. Everyone celebrates the special moment and Opera invites them to finally eat dessert. However, Sullivan is frustrated with the outcome and in order to demonstrate to his grandson that he is not a loser, he invites everyone to participate in the Great Dark March. This meant going to a dark and deserted place, and simply wandering around, so everyone heads underground. Iruma understands that this could be a test of courage by his grandfather. While they were walking around the place, Opera talks to Sullivan and tells his master that there is no trap in that place, just a deposit at the end of the path. Sullivan then replies that he just wants to show his grandson and his friends something interesting. The demon then asks everyone to stay where they are. Meanwhile, he heads to a dark and abandoned entrance that exists in that place. A few seconds later, the students are surprised by a strong grunt that came from inside that sinister place. Sullivan returns to where his expedition companions were and brings his pet creature with him. Everyone is impressed, but the demon finds this a perfect situation to demonstrate his power. They just didn't realize that it was all just an act. Their pet creature was inside that monster costume and the two arranged to have a fake fight, where in the end, Sullivan would be the big winner. However, the demon's plan goes haywire when Clara and Asmodeus try to protect him. The Wonder Boy and the Misfit Girl summon their familiars. Only the Gorgon snake was enough to scare the disguised monster, who quickly fled the scene. When the situation was under control, the trio of friends decided to explore the site even further, accompanied by Sullivan and Opera. The group is now in front of a huge gate. They enter the place and the expectation of each one only grows more to discover what they will find at the end of that place. Sullivan is nervous, as this is just his depository of old things and he would have nothing fun to do there. Desperate, he asks Opera for help and the butler says Sullivan will owe him a favor. When the trio of friends approach the end of that sinister place, among several objects a gigantic skeletal dragon appears to attack them. Asmodeus thinks fast and summons his Gorgon snake again. The familiar fires several flame attacks towards the mighty monster, but it takes no damage. Then we realize that actually, Opera created that dragon through a holographic projection, which belonged to the dance game everyone played earlier. The butler gives the signal to his master and quickly Sullivan enters the scene. The demon concentrates all his strength and performs a jump, defeating the monster with a powerful kick. Iruma and his friends are impressed by this, recognizing the strength that the director of the Babel's institution possessed. Further on, the group realizes that there is a small box on the floor. The trio is excited to think that it could be a treasure. When they open the box, they see that it is a birthday cake. Immediately Iruma realizes that Opera was responsible for all that, leaving his grandfather sad for not having the recognition as he wished. In this way, they all return to the protagonist's house and eat the special dessert. Iruma notices that the time for his friends to leave is near, so he ends up calling them to his room and there the trio has fun jumping on the bed. But time passes and the moment comes when Clara and Asmodeus say goodbye to their friend. The protagonist tells the two that they need to repeat these celebrations more often, and they all agree. Upon returning inside his house, the young man is extremely grateful to his grandfather and opera for providing such a fun and amazing evening with his friends. Even that same night, Iruma was already tired. When he is surprised by the sudden appearance of Alucard, the creature begins to reminisce about the challenges his master has gone through. The protagonist tries to continue the conversation about the demonic cycle and the personality change, but ends up falling asleep. Alucard, on the other hand, remains thoughtful about what his master has said. Then he points his finger towards Iruma and commands him to become evil, emitting a light of power. The next day, Sullivan goes cheerfully to his grandson's room to bring him breakfast, but ends up having an inconvenient surprise. The protagonist wakes up with a completely different expression, speech and behavior than normal. At breakfast, Sullivan is saddened by this situation. After all, his innocent and fearful grandson was now arrogant and macabre. The protagonist meets Clara and Asmodeus to go to school. Iruma orders his friend to carry his backpack, leaving the prodigy young man happy to finally be able to carry an object of his best friend. Iruma calls his grandfather's royal carriage and the three of them head to school together. When they arrive at the institution, they end up drawing a lot of attention from everyone, but the protagonist doesn't seem to care about that at all. In the classroom, the young man's classmates eventually notice the change in Iruma's personality. Asmodeus explains to everyone that his friend is going through an evil cycle. Only demons have this cycle in their lives, but Iruma was eventually forced into an evil personality because Alucard used his magic to put his master into this state. The young man who once had flowers flying around him now has black feathers dancing around him. His classmates decide that they must not annoy him in any way so that nothing horrible happens in the next few days. Later, the misfits find other students throwing garbage near their classroom. No one had respect for Iruma's class. After all, for every school, that room was made up entirely of demons who had some problem. Iruma, hearing those offenses, points his finger towards the garbage and uses the magic of his ring, conjuring demonic flames that begin to burn all the garbage that was in that place. The protagonist tells his class that he will leave that place falling apart and will move to a castle. With these words, everyone is amazed at the young man's strength and determination. Later, the misfits start showing the whole school that they are a strong class and that no one should mess with them. The whole class is in the teacher's room at the moment. They are in a meeting with Professor Kalego. Iruma represents them in this situation and demands that the room of the misfits be in another place, because the place where they were is terrible, with bags of garbage around the class, cracks in the walls, broken windows, and this totally influences the students' learning. The protagonist also states that everyone there is a student of the institution and therefore should be treated like any other and not as a group of freaks. Kalego, hearing that, calls up his report book and remembers why each of those students was in that class. Iruma committed violent acts at the opening ceremony and destroyed the school building, with Alice Asmodeus as his main accomplice. Sabnok Sabro carried out violent actions against a teacher and destroyed part of the school. Andro Jazz practiced theft of property from students and teachers, stealing valuable and magical items from anyone. Cressel Karori had no act of defiance on her record. Shax Lide was responsible for the serious health condition of 6 students who went to hospital shortly after playing for many hours in a row. Kame Kamui is singled out for spying on female students and teachers. And Valak Clara, she is in the class just for being herself. On top of all this, the class is responsible for damaging property, illegally trespassing in dangerous areas and possessing illegal substances. The teachers nearby are shocked by all the dangerous acts the class has committed. Iruma agrees in part with his teacher, but tells him that they should not be treated as abnormal. The young man agrees with the isolation, but the garbage that is around the class harms too much the coexistence in the place. Therefore, the protagonist asks to be transferred to another isolated room, but Kalego replies that there is no more isolated room in the school. However, Iruma questions him, saying that there is another place. The young man reveals that he intends to go to the royal classroom, Royal 1. This room was used by the deceased former demon king, Durkilla, when he was still a student at the Babel's institution. Since then, it has been completely preserved by the school and has never been used again, as it has become a sacred place. Kalego, upon hearing those words, becomes enraged, and upon being challenged by Iruma, the two enter into a real confrontation of ideas, where in the end, the teacher of the misfits agrees that his students move to Royal 1, but only if they get the signatures with authorization from all teachers in 3 days. The protagonist thanks him and the class leaves the teacher's room, leaving everyone who was there confused and discredited after that conversation. Kalego says that it will be impossible for the class to get the authorization of all the teachers, so he wants to see how far his students will go. Iruma gathers his classmates and discusses how they will do to fulfill this new insane mission, but the protagonist, realizing that his friends were already becoming discredited, invites them to follow him. The group leaves the institution and follows through a forest, arriving at a room away from the whole school. That was the famous royal one, which until now was sealed. Iruma tells everyone that until this moment they had only sought fun at the college, but they should start the path of ambition, and that place would be the first goal of the misfits. In this place, they could enjoy an amazing room with various books and games, a training room, a nap room, and all the equipment that money can buy is stored in that place. Moreover, it had a huge closet and a completely acoustically insulated room. The class is elated to hear of all the benefits they will receive, and so Iruma declares that the conquest mission for Royal One is officially underway. Will the misfits really get the new special room? And will Iruma continue with his new dark personality? So, what did you think of this anime? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like it and subscribe for more anime recaps. See you next time.